Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigilant Network show. My name is Emma Vigilant, and you know what to do, folks. If you are watching live, please like this stream. Hey, if you're watching afterwards, comment below. Let me know what you think. Increases engagement, all that good stuff. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Rate us 5 stars on podcast platforms. And say hello to Bradley Alsop, where we will not be talking about Biden having the worst debate performance in the history of the world, and now he may actually have to drop out of the race, which is all I've been able to think about because I'm terrified of Donald Trump, as we all should be. But this is not where we talk about politics. This is where we talk about sports? Question mark?
Joe Biden,
I know.
the senator from Delaware?
Yes, the senator from the credit card state. Did you know about this? Did you know
Didn't know
about the
he was-
bankruptcy bill?
Didn't know he was making news these days.
Apparently he is, but not in the way that he should be, unfortunately. So, oh my God. 5-alarm fire within the Democratic Party, but we're here to escape. There actually was so much going on this past week, sports-wise, too, that, we're not even talking about the draft. I know that this particular NBA draft is one of the weakest in quite a while, and I think it's also difficult to garner people's attention when most of the players that were high up on people's boards, and I get our international players are playing in the G League, which is a welcome sign. You know my feelings about the college system and how it exploits players, and hopefully that changes, and maybe they can compete with the G League if they actually offer salaries to their players instead of just making them play for free. But we're seeing a little bit of the effects of that, which is that, I know Castle at the UConn went to the San Antonio Spurs, and that was high up, and Chris Paul's now going to be there, so good mentor as the potential, the new starting point guard eventually at the very least for the San Antonio Spurs. But and then we had an NHL draft that was somewhat interesting as well. But free agency, signings, trades, all of that happened right after the Stanley Cup champion was crowned, even before there were some moves being made.
It's I think it's a little hard to muster up as much excitement for this type of NBA draft post Victor Wembanyama, because you're basically going from one of the most generational, transformational prospects, not only in like NBA history, which yes, NBA history, but like potentially in all of or the big 4 sports leagues and just organized American sports in general, to a bunch of real projects at the top of the draft who basically are more of like a Rorschach image than they are actual players. Like every single scouting report that you could read about Zachary Ricochet, the number 1 overall pick, was basically like, he's really long and fast and athletic, but the downside is he doesn't really know how to play basketball. And I'm like, okay, so
well, it's just incredible. I feel like there's so much variance in the NBA in terms of talent draft, like the way drafts are stacked. In that, I mean, the big news of the night, I guess, for the NBA with the draft was that Zach Edey was taken way earlier by the Memphis Grizzlies than he was expected to be. I mean, I understand that they want a big guy to anchor that team, but I don't necessarily think that was the smartest play. They wanted the starting center, someone to fill in there, but yeah, I'm not sure I understood that pick by the Grizzlies.
We will see if Edey, given his limitations in terms
athletically,
in terms of his mobility and his mobility and his ability to work in space, both offensively and defensively, will either improve dramatically or be a real weight around the neck of the Grizzlies as a result of them picking him this high in the draft. But still remains to be seen. He has great touch around the rim. He's very, very large. It's just there aren't many guys like him that remain in the modern NBA. So we'll see if that works out. But
shout out to France, though. I mean, French players taken
Yep.
3 of the top 6 picks.
Alex Sarr.
And Saluan was taken by the Charlotte Hornets as well. I guess then the other big projected top 10 pick from the UConn National Championships was Donovan Clingan, who ended up going to the Portland Trailblazers. But other than that, you had Macklin Celebrini going first overall in the NHL draft. That was pretty cool. Because his dad worked, I believe, in the sports science or athletic department for the Golden State Warriors when he was growing up. So he was a fan of the Bay Area and all it had to provide and spent a lot of his life there. So the fact that the Sharks got the first overall pick was an exciting development. And the Montreal Canadiens, they got Demidov, who, I don't know if you heard about this player, Bradley, but he was considered as skilled as Macklin Celebrini, but he ended up falling to 5 because he's under contract with a Russian team in, I think it was in St. Petersburg, and he may not be able to come over for a little bit of while, and that's some of the issues with Russian players. But in terms of skill, he's being compared to Artemi Panarin as somebody that could actually be a transformative player. So if the Canadiens, they apparently have a good relationship with their the team over there in St. Petersburg. If they're able to negotiate something and he can get over to North America, to Canada, fairly early, that would be big for them. And so he should have gone second overall. But the problem is just that people get skittish about the Russia stuff and the contracts over there. But yeah, I mean, that's really it. From the draft perspective, I don't have a ton of analysis. I didn't dive as heavily into prospects this year because, the Rangers and Knicks, that affects my reading of these things, and they were picking way late, so it didn't matter too much, although I was pretty thrilled with the Rangers pick. E.J. Emery going to University of North Dakota, the first black player to play on that team, that hockey team, in 30 years, so I texted naturally Matt Leck about it. Even though he's more of a Gophers guy, but he grew up in North Dakota, and he informed me about that arena. Maybe this is why they have some issues, and it's more of a commentary on hockey, but he was like, no, this is worse than you realize. The arena at North Dakota was paid for by a very wealthy alumni at University of North Dakota who was a literal Nazi. Got fined the second largest fine in the history of Las Vegas. He's a casino magnate for hosting Hitler-themed parties in which, I need to tell people about this. It's absolutely insane.
Seems like a bad thing for black hockey recruits to take a quick Google search about and see where they will be playing and what their ice is, the origin of the rink that they'd be playing.
It's not great.
University of North Dakota.
Really not great. So this guy's name was Ralph Engelstad. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but it's just absolutely so insane. So he was fined by Las Vegas because he had multiple parties that involved around Nazi themes. His casino had an unusual private suite, a quote war room stocked with Nazi posters and other memorabilia, as well as a collection of cars used by Hitler, Mussolini, Göring, and Himmler. On at least 2 occasions, he used the suite to celebrate Hitler's birthday, complete with German food and cake decorated with a swastika. Although Mr. Engelstad denied he was a Nazi sympathizer and claimed he was only putting on a quote spoof, he was fined by the Nevada Gaming Control Board for damaging Las Vegas's reputation, but his name is still on the arena, and that's the subject of some controversy, but not a lot. And you will be not be surprised to hear that he was instrumental in trying to force the North Dakota to keep their mascot as the Fighting Sioux, which they ended up having to get changed because the NCAA basically put the hammer down on them and compelled them to. But he threatened to withhold his money from the University of North Dakota if they decided to change their symbol, but denied publicly being a Nazi, even though he did have bunch of Nazi memorabilia, did a bunch of Nazi parties, had a portrait of Adolf Hitler, all of that.
It's really never good when your Wikipedia entry has a tab that's called Nazi controversy with a subhead of Hitler birthday parties.
Yeah.
That's really not usually where you want to be if someone just Googles, what's the origin of the name of this arena?
It is a massive arena in North Dakota. It was $104 million that he erected there. So people can look that up if they want to. But oh my God.
It'd be worth a new name.
Yeah, maybe. But I think his descendants are like,
listen,
you can't do that.
You have to honor our Nazi forebear.
It's unbelievable. That was a huge aside. So that was the draft commentary. Now let's talk about NBA free agency and signings. This got kicked off with our New York Knicks doing what they finally cashed in on all those draft picks that they have been collecting, these first round picks, since the Porzingis trade, which that was in the Steve Mills era, and that trade aged very well in my opinion. I know he's an NBA champion, but they got
but not for the team that we traded him to.
No, and we got a bunch of first round picks for that reason, and so this was the way for the Knicks to get the final piece. And Mikal Bridges, I know he's never made an All-Star team. I know that amount of first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. Wow, that seems like a lot. But the reality is that the Knicks had a ton of first-round picks, and this was the way that they could get a piece where they could actually compete. Because now with OG Anunoby, who also re-signed to a 5-year, $212.5 million deal, he did that right after the trade for Bridges. The Knicks have two defenders on the wing where they can actually compete with the Boston Celtics, who
and two guys who
have
can create
elite
their own
guys
shot.
On the right, and they can create their own shot.
They can create their own shot and they can shoot. It's like the blueprint of who was central to the Celtics winning their championship is essentially what it maybe not the same exact stature of the people on the Celtics, but very good in their own right, in my view, is what they're doing with OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
It's the exact same philosophy, having two guys with with incredible traits, great arm length, lockdown defenders at most positions, can basically guard or defend their, an opposing team's best player. And I mean, with OG Anunoby, he was guarding stars basically the majority of the Knicks playoff run and the end of the last regular season. And they can drive into the paint and they can shoot. The Knicks have the Knicks have had some of those skills in different areas of their roster and with different players, but never in these two packages, and especially let alone one package. The fact that is that we have two guys who are essentially mirrors of one another, and just OG Anunoby's just a year younger.
Yeah, and look, I'm sad to lose Hartenstein, but the Knicks apparently offered him a 3-year, $72 million deal, but he got way more from OKC, and it was a 4-year. I forget what the exact, the rumored offer was, but he got more money and a significant amount.
Hartenstein is great.
Oklahoma City, and that gives them, by the way, Hartenstein's really good, but with Holmgren, that gives them real versatility, and if they need to get really big, and then also it takes pressure off of Holmgren if Hartenstein can come off the bench, or they want to be really interesting and flexible with their lineups. They had issues with size, and Hartenstein solves that, but he's offensively talented too.
Well, I think it gives them a little bit of a different option in terms of their size, in the sense that, while Chet can still be the guy that he is, and that he can pull up from three or defend guys in space, while still being a good rim protector for his size, not height, for his weight. Hartenstein has a little bit of all of that except for the 3-point shooting, but he won't be needed to do that given how many guys on that team can shoot.
Exactly, so that's not their problem.
As you were saying with the size problem, what he is going to be able to do, which they did not have an answer for in the playoffs this season, he will be able to hoover up rebounds in a way that no one on that roster was able to do last year.
Yeah.
So they will receive a large rebounding advantage that they did not have before, that I think can honestly be a little bit of a missing piece for them.
Right.
But to your point with the Knicks and
let me just say,
go ahead.
The Knicks offered him, and I got the numbers, 4 years, $72.5 million. That was all they could squeeze. And now, and what he got from the Thunder was 3-year, $87 million, which is astronomically larger. So he can come back to I mean, he's in his mid-20s now. He'll be able to get another contract. This is one of the trends you're seeing. Guys that want to like bet on themselves, get money when they can, and then get back when the cap keeps going up. This is big in the NFL
definitely.
right now. So 3-year, $87 million versus what the Knicks offered him, 4-year, 72.5. No chance they could compete with that.
And the thing is, as you said, it's unfortunate to lose him because especially given the injuries and also given how kind of seamlessly he meshed into this Knicks lineup. It's sad to lose him, but at the same time, if I'm looking at the composition of the team, I'm definitely okay with knowing that we have Bridges, that the Knicks have Bridges, Anunoby, and Randall, and potentially, you know, a healthy, rested Mitchell Robinson. Because at the end of the day, Mitchell Robinson's health concerns me relative to like Hartenstein's durability only really petering out in the very end of the Pacers series. And obviously, Mitch has struggled with injuries in the past, but I still think Mitch's defense combined with just the more athletic upside that he possesses relative to Hartenstein is still a good option, and maybe even potentially the superior option when healthy.
Well, and then in just terms of like cap, we'll talk about the Cavs in a second, but it seems like they're a little bit open for business with Jarrett Allen. That could be an interesting option for the Knicks if they can make it work. And then I know that apparently they're also interested in that Utah Jazz center whose name is escaping me right now.
Walker Kessler?
Yes,
Yeah,
apparently they are. Like, they can get... Like, Mitchell... Hartenstein was coming off the bench for a majority of the season for the Knicks.
It was he got into the starting lineup essentially at the end of the season / the playoffs just by necessity.
Yes, Mitch can't stay healthy, but like to the example for OG Anunoby, that was I think it was Hartenstein was in foul trouble and then Mitch got injured. And guess who went on Embiid in that game? OG, and he was a freaking champ. And like he can defend anybody. We have two of the most versatile defenders in the game on the Knicks right now, and they can be really dangerous against the Boston Celtics. Like okay, they overpaid for Bridges, I get it, but the Knicks have way more first-round picks than they knew what to do with. They were trying to get Boston to trade their crosstown rival. The Knicks and the Nets haven't done a trade since the 80s because the Nets didn't want to engage with it because they don't have any fans. And like they are jealous of the Knicks, sorry. And like that was what had to get it over the hump. And I'm not mad about that at all because this is a complete team at this point.
And also, I just think for me personally, I value the wing versatility much more, especially given as we were talking about past being prologue of how successful the Celtics were primarily because of that exact wing versatility that they bet on and persisted with despite many attempts to or many clamorings to break up the duo of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But then which then obviously resulted in the fact that they held firm and ultimately won a championship by virtue of having a dynamic wing duo who can create and shoot and defend basically every position.
And now Dante DiVincenzo can come off the bench.
Right, Josh Hart can come off the bench. But at the expense of potentially some center depth, which if that's shored up in any way, I'll still feel somewhat okay because of the wing versatility that I know we have, and also knowing that obviously there are going to be jokes about Thibodeau and Bridges because Bridges is essentially an Iron Man. Bridges hasn't missed a game since high school.
Yeah.
But like, if anything, that's a player that Thibodeau. I think that's for as much as those kind of jokes and those kind of memes are proliferate, it's very clear how much these guys, especially the Villanova guys, love Thibodeau and love playing for him, and I think almost appreciate how much he wants them to stay on the floor and compete. And I almost think it seems like they're potentially, I'm just speculating on this, but it does seem like honestly there might be a little bit of a kindred spirit between the coaching styles of Jay Wright and that of Tom Thibodeau.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. And
they all seem to be in a one way or the other. They're very, very. All these guys for the most part are incredibly durable and also are really adamant about. I mean, knock on wood a million.
And
times.
not Anunoby has issues, but yeah.
But I'm saying of the guys
from the Nova,
yeah. You know, is. They've been pretty durable, and also it seems like they all really are committed to not like they don't want to participate in load management, so to speak, if they don't have to. So I think if anything, it'll be a feature or be more of a benefit to them that Bridges is not that type of player.
And I get it about Tibbs, but he gets in. I heard him on the roommate show. Those guys love him. They know he works them hard, but he's also adjusted his practice style. When he was in Chicago, he was like, the guys talked about how they would have to get taped up for practice. He's evolved, and that means a lot, I think. And so we'll see. We could talk about the Knicks forever, but I mean, Philadelphia, let's just talk about them, because that's the third team, I think, in the East that people are going to be watching out for, of course, to come out after the Celtics now won like what seemed like the easiest championship in history. The Knicks could be healthy, hopefully, and now Paul George is going to Philadelphia. 4-year deal as opposed to the 3-year deal that the Clippers were offering him. Now, Paul George, when healthy, is the man. Defensively, offensively, and he had spurts in this playoff run with the Clippers where he looked like, himself. But it's a 4-year deal. He's 34 years old, and he will be 38. 4-year, $212 million. And the 76ers have issues with health. But, like, that starting three, and I now, they're shoring up their depth with Andre Drummond coming off the bench, which I think is something that the 76ers really needed to do. But your fears for Philly are going to be health. And that's a long deal for a guy that will be 38 at the end of it, who's already kind of struggled to stay healthy. But when Paul George is healthy, and Maxey and Joel Embiid, that is a terrifying starting three. The problem still is with Philadelphia is depth, and the problem still with Philadelphia is health. And the Knicks are deeper, and so are the Celtics. Like, I still put them at third in the East, even with the powers, the stars that they have there. Well,
and just not to completely circle back to the Knicks only seconds later, but I just think in comparing these two moves, I completely understand why. I completely understand why the Sixers would do something like this, because it's very clear, just from a completely binary standpoint, if you just look at it from this very, open and shut dynamic, is that just factually, you slot in Paul George in that line, a healthy Paul George in that lineup, for whatever minutes Tobias Harris was playing, and you are getting an immediate exponential upgrade.
Huge 3-point shooting, defense.
Towards the end of the season, Tobias Harris was a complete non-entity.
Oh my God, he was horrible in the playoffs. Horrible.
They were basically playing 5-on-4 with Harris on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, he was playing some of the worst basketball of his career. Now, any of the things that Tobias Harris does well are completely upgraded with even a 34-year-old Paul George, because honestly, when he is healthy, the game does not seem to have slowed down for him whatsoever. It's literally just the maintaining of him being on the floor.
Right.
So, but I do agree with you in the sense that the one thing I think is a little bit odd about Daryl Morey is that, as the general manager of this team, is there's something to be said that even Jimmy Butler just should not have been traded.
Yeah.
Even going back that far, and I even think Joel Embiid, where he tries to be a little bit more diplomatic about this, I think he'd agree. I think he never ever wanted Jimmy Butler to not be on his team.
I think so too, but I think Daryl Morey has an issue with being a bit of a dick.
Totally, not just being. I think he did both him being personally grating, but also I think him just being so mercenary about making players happy and content to be there. He's always sort of looking for the next thing, but sometimes the next thing always seems to be part of a circle that Morey inhabits, which is, how many times I made this joke to my friend. How many times has this guy signed Eric Gordon to his team?
I know.
How many times can you sign Eric Gordon from 4 or 5 different, 3 different franchises? It's nuts.
Yeah.
And not to say Eric Gordon is not a good player, but at this point in his career, he's in his early to mid 30s now, and he's mostly serves as a spot up shooter. They definitely need depth. They need depth in the way that for the positions that they have paid a premium for. And what I mean by that is Paul Reed Paul Reed's a fan favorite in Philadelphia. He's a good backup center, but I just think when you have Joel Embiid as your focal point, I think you need a little bit more than that to back him up in the event that he gets hurt, because he gets hurt a lot.
He does.
It's by virtue of his size and stature and how he plays, and it's also it's slightly it's slightly to his benefit in the sense that the reason he gets hurt is because he is so willing to take contact. He is so willing to drive into the lane and have 8 arms on him. But at the same time, with all that being said, I think you want a guy who you can rely on. That is almost not, no one can replicate Joel Embiid, but I'm saying almost to have somewhat of a redundancy at that position and at the wing position. So if those guys do get hurt, you have some sort of contingency plan.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about Tyrese Maxey nearly as much because Maxey's very young and he's extremely athletic and
fast, right?
And he like, I just do not worry nearly as much as at him getting hurt. But there's a track record for George and Embiid, and they're not getting any younger.
That's true, and that's the thing is, look, Paul George at his best, I'd be hard pressed to think of a player I'd want more on my team. Just from a defense perspective, his game is just incredibly smooth. He's a phenomenal shooter. He's everything. I mean, he's smart. He's like character guy. I love Paul George, but
no, he's like the platonic ideal of a successful NBA basketball player.
Exactly, right?
There's a reason why a lot of guys, like, people always get surprised by this when younger NBA players who are kind of in that younger NBA wings are like, my favorite player is Paul George, or like, I think the best player in the league is Paul George. It's because of that. Me saying the platonic ideal is because he doesn't do anything poorly.
No,
he does everything well.
He does everything right. But that's the question: age, health, depth.
Because on paper, this is a great freaking starting five.
Oh, 100%.
It is Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid,
Paul George,
and then I guess presumably it could be, DeAnthony Melton.
Yep.
And I guess I'm trying to figure out who would be the 5th guy.
I mean, I guess Oubre
or Kelly, and honestly, like, to me, even with that, Melton can create his own shot and shoot. Oubre impressed me so much in terms of his defense on Jalen Brunson in the first round, and when he can get hot, he's an incredible scorer.
Yeah.
So I think they can make a lot of hay with that lineup. It's literally my only concern is that they make sure that those guys stay on the floor.
Yeah. Speaking of Tobias Harris, the fact that him going to the Pistons, what are the Pistons doing? I just gotta say, like,
they fired Monty Williams after one season. I think, which was probably for the best because he very clearly hated being their coach.
Right. They extended. They gave Cade Cunningham the max that he could. There's some kids in the hallway if people hear that. The Quentin Grimes they traded away, and Quentin Grimes they get that's a really good deal for the Mavericks because he can play defense, and that's really good.
And shoot.
And shoot. Yeah. Right, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like we'll obviously probably we'll of course get to the Mavs with Klay Thompson, but I'm just saying I feel like what's been good with those two moves is just like giving Luka some established shooting.
But it's just like, how long are the Pistons going to be the salary dump fest for Tim Hardaway Jr.? Quentin Grimes can shoot and then play defense, which they needed in Dallas, and so that's a good move for them, and he's young and talented. Now the Pistons are just like, okay, Tobias Harris, salary dump area for Tim Hardaway Jr., and then what?
No, I mean, and here's also the problem with the Pistons is that I think you almost, when you're in their position, because you're such a bad team, no one, the Bucks were in this position for some time. The Nuggets were in this position for some time, where it was like, why would I go play in Milwaukee? Why would I go play in Denver? Not to deride either city. I don't want to get into Donald Trump territory and deride Milwaukee.
But not big market, not warm weather.
But when you hit in the draft, when you hit on a guy named Giannis Antetokounmpo, or are we hitting on a guy in the second round during a Taco Bell ad, Nikola Jokic? Then players start wanting to come to Denver and want to come to Milwaukee because the teams are good.
Yeah.
No one wants to come here because there's nothing functional.
Right.
Cade Cunningham has received this deal because they basically have to overpay to have somewhat functional players.
Yeah.
Cade Cunningham was the first overall pick a few years ago. He has not shown, in my view, he has not shown the upside that Anthony Edwards has as a former first overall pick, and I would say not even close to that.
Yeah, right.
He has either been hurt when he was out for the season last year or the season before. And we've seen flashes, but he is somebody that his game is kind of funky. Mm-hmm. He has a lot of change of direction speed. He's a good passer. He's a decent shooter. He needs guys around him to accent his game. Yeah. And Jalen Duren is also, I think, a promising, fun player who is you can't teach the size and athleticism that Jalen Duren has, but the issue that the Pistons have is one that the Magic had for years, which is you can draft all these guys who have upside, who have athleticism, who are interesting, who show flashes of greatness in their own way. If there's nothing congealing them, if there's nothing coherent, they're not going to. They will never be good. They will never be a good team. If there's no coaching stability, if there's no ingenuity from the front office, because clearly there's no ingenuity from the front office. This team is the island of misfit toys.
The
Cade
roster,
Cunningham and Jalen Duren.
I mean, to be honest, that's like the floor of that lack of strategy that you're seeing in Detroit. The ceiling is what you're seeing in Cleveland. Where, I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers have a lot of talent but no cohesion. Donovan Mitchell. They just extended him, and good for them. They should try to build around him. But the point for like the Cavs is just the core is going to be Mobley and Mitchell. But like, what are we doing with Darius Garland and that small of a backcourt? What are we doing with Jared Allen at this point? Like, the Cavs need to be better and find a more cohesive identity too, because even though they made the playoffs, I don't necessarily see them as a team that has it together. They're talented, but not a team in that same way. Like, they're probably going to move, I think, Jared Allen is what the scuttlebutt is.
But to your point with that, too, is that as an example of that first-round series, even though the Cavs ultimately won it in Game 7, I'm not only saying that stars transform these things, but I'm also saying, as you were alluding to, identities change these things too, and sometimes that comes from not only your roster but coaching. Like, JB Bickerstaff did not establish an identity with this team.
Right.
It's not. There is. I am certain that
we'll see what Kenny Atkinson does.
That's what I'm saying. Is also, I am certain that in a team that has, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, maybe still Jared Allen potentially, but then like Max Strus and George Niang, like. And I think there is absolutely something that can be made from the Dean Wade that can be made from this team. But Bickerstaff was just not the guy to do it. Mm-hmm. Whereas, for example, it's much less heralded just because no one really thinks about the Magic, which, like, fair enough. But, like, Jamal Mosley, after picking after they picked Paolo Banchero first, they developed Mo Wagner. They developed Jalen Suggs. Like, that team became a absolute menace on defense with enough offense to sustain them and take a Cavs team to Game 7 when no one was expecting the Magic to be in the playoffs.
Well, this is a good segue because the Magic just made a really good move with Contavious Caldwell-Pope.
100%, who fits directly into their identity.
It's exactly what we said during that series, where they need somebody who's going to be able to distribute and who's going to be able to, like, I mean, they have a defensive identity, obviously, but like now they can have somebody who can shoot the basketball. And the Nuggets are a little. I don't know. Can they run it? Can they be the same team that they were last year in the championship year? I don't know.
I will say. I think a big issue that they ran into, which they maybe weren't expecting as much. It wasn't that they weren't expecting as much, but I think they almost did something. For example, that the Chiefs do in football, which is that we just won a championship. We have arguably the best player in the league on our team. We're not going to be able to keep everybody.
Yeah.
So Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, who were crucial bench players for them, Bruce Brown basically won a few games for the Nuggets in their championship title run. They leave, and Peyton Watson and Christian Brown and Zeke Naji are these guys who are just further down the bench, who are younger, fill in the gaps. And although that's minor, it's something that is fundamentally different from their championship team. Mm-hmm. KCP leaves. KCP is a starter for the Nuggets.
KCP's deal is 3 years, $66 million. That seems low to me.
No, for a guy who was in my view, in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation.
Well,
he is like a lockdown defender and can shoot. And he also for the Magic, I think what's so important for that group of rascals is having a older vet player who has won. Has a winning mentality and has won important games.
It's a perfect fit. I just was surprised at the fact that it was such a low figure, but I guess no income tax in Florida seems to be winning the day for a lot of these deals. Still, what a coup by them.
It's going to be like that is like for what they have with Paolo and with Mo Wagner as their big men. For him to come in there and be a what could be almost like a two-headed dragon of 1 and 2 with Suggs. Suggs, who in his own right is a phenomenal defender,
Right.
and a tireless player, like a guy who will literally like jump 4 rows into the seats to get a loose ball, even though he's a top 10, top 12 pick. Like, him and KCP to me are almost like kindred spirits. Having those 4 in a lineup with maybe either Jonathan Isaac or someone else in their lineup to even if it's Gary Harris at the 1, 2, 3, then Mo and Paolo. That's a really
Wendell Carter, right?
Wendell Carter, who is a legitimately really great player, who has always been good, but has just kind of gone from sort of like middling or mediocre scenario from Chicago to Orlando. This team hasn't already figured out on defense. If their offense can cohere a little bit more after just more tread on the tires, and I trust Mosley as
and they're
going
to trust that Paolo can put it together offensively.
And Paolo already I think shows defensive effort, which is the most important part.
Yeah.
And he's already
that's what I meant. Yeah,
and he's already a pretty phenomenal scorer.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's exciting. The Magic got better, and that was a great value deal for them.
And to circle it back around just to Detroit really quickly is look at what they're doing in Orlando and what the Pistons have not been able to do for essentially 10 years.
Yeah. It's they're lucky that the Lions are really good because they'd be getting more attention.
Yeah. They on my wedding day, they somehow, some way broke their near record losing streak in the regular season.
It's because of the power of your love.
It's the power of love.
Yeah. With your wife.
Yeah, that's right.
Water is nice. Water is good. So okay. H2O. We had H2O during. I thought about the presidential election again. I said I wasn't going to. Okay. So to the west. Klay Thompson to the Mavs. To the west. You got me in a singing mood now, and I'm not.
Is it this way or this way?
What do you? Oh.
Is this west?
Are you flexing?
No, I'm saying is this west or is this west?
We face the west actually this way.
Okay.
Because remember that's when the sun goes before they built that building.
That's right.
It used to get right in my eyes. The Klay Thompson to the Mavericks for $50 million. 3 or 4 years. 3? 4? You mind looking that up?
Yeah. I let me just double. I'm pretty sure it's 3 for Klay, but
I think so too. I didn't write that down. Anyway, long story short, Klay Thompson. I mean, just the man.
3 year, $50 million. 3 years, $50 million.
That makes more sense. Yeah. Look.
It's gonna
obviously
be so strange to see him in another uniform.
So weird and
wild. I can't believe it.
The
truly.
Klay moment is him tearing his ACL, coming out, and because he didn't know what happened, he couldn't re-enter the game. If this was against the Raptors, that's when I think of Klay Thompson. I think of that during that final series where he tore his ACL and he came back and shot 2 free throws and then left the floor. Just
there was also the 11-3 game in the finals. That was like he's
iconic player.
Yeah, iconic player, and I also think like I don't ever think he gets sold short. I just more mean like I think because of how good of a shooter he was alongside Steph, it sort of potentially flattened or shrouded some of the other great aspects of his game because he truly did have some sauce off the dribble and in his prime was an actually pretty great perimeter defender.
Yeah. Not so much now, but
the age and I think the injuries have definitely hampered that a little bit.
But if he can still make threes like that, just
100%.
Stand there and take some of the pressure off of Kyrie and Luka. Just stand there in the corner. You get one fewer defender swarming the 2 stars there. And
it spaces their floor so significantly.
It does.
Klay Thompson on the corner or something like that.
They should be a little worried about their defense. Like Derek Jones is going to the Clippers, and PJ Washington had a really good playoffs, but not offensively as much. But or at least I'm thinking, I guess, of the final series, most fresh in my mind. Yeah, he was okay. He had some flashes, but he's going to have to anchor that defense more than. Like more pressure on him a little bit.
Washington has the profile of what we've been talking about with like Tatum, Brown, etc. Like it being that type of like swingman mold. The issue is his best 3-point shooting stretch was in this playoffs. He has never been he was almost closer to 30 than 40 in terms of his 3-point shooting when he was in Charlotte, and even earlier in the season when he was traded to the Mavs.
Gotcha.
He caught fire in the playoffs.
But not in the finals.
No, but not in the finals, because I think the concern is like that shooting is going to, in my view, most likely regress closer to the mean and stay there. So I think getting Klay is huge just to space the floor and have a more reliable shooting outlet.
Right.
Even if Klay is not, as you're saying, offering that much in the way of defense or other playmaking ability, but the fact that Luka could potentially just have a reliable place to go with the ball out behind the 3-point line, alongside, as well as with who were we talking about with the Pistons? Who's there now? Who's Grimes?
Hardaway
and Quentin Grimes.
Well, Grimes coming. Yes, Grimes coming over. Right.
To Dallas is that I think that's more shooting than they honestly had consistently, because with a lineup with that Luka had where it's PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and Derek Lively, or one of the two of Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Lively and Gafford are basically offering you zero shooting.
Yep.
And Washington is offering you very streaky shooting that was literally the best it's been in his career in this postseason. But as you're saying, Derek Jones Jr. was surprisingly extremely crucial to the Mavs' success. He was kind of known as the dunker guy. Like, he was a great dunk contest guy. Like, he was a pretty lockdown defender, could knock down shots when he needed to, and basically was one of those guys, like, he kind of did everything right for a playoff team.
Right.
Losing him, I think, will be a tough hole to fill.
Yes, but they do have Grimes,
but Grimes can defend, which
Grimes
is crucial.
can defend. He's a good defender. I wonder how much is Quentin Grimes getting paid right now?
I can't imagine it's too much. From Detroit
like I don't think. I mean, they may have been able to get him on the cheap. If he even has re-signed. Is he still on his rookie deal? Wow, yeah.
He's not that old. I think he's
still on his rookie deal,
2020 or 2021.
So this is a big year for him, and maybe he can force his way into the starting lineup with the Mavericks when they may need some defense, right? So we'll see. What else do we have here? I mean, I guess like we mentioned Donovan Mitchell, Paul George. James Harden re-signed with the Clippers, 2 years, $70 million. I don't know what the state of that team is with Paul George leaving. Like, what's up with the Clippers? I think
whatever happens with Kawhi is probably the next shoe to drop. But at the same time, when I say what's next to happen with Kawhi is like, is it viable to keep him on a team?
It makes me so sad. Like,
he cannot stay on the floor.
When Paul George and Kawhi Leonard were on that team together, those are my, we were saying how Paul George is Kawhi Leonard for me is the kind of basketball player when healthy I would love to have on my team. Same with Paul George, just professionals.
No, I have a real sentimentality for Kawhi Leonard, especially the 2019 Raptors.
The Raptors
because I was like, that was like the example of like, he was just I find it so incredible because like he was literally a hired gun, and usually those things just don't work out for people, and he just was like, I'm going to bring this team to an NBA championship.
He took over. He took over.
Beat everybody and win the finals for this team.
Right after being like shepherded out by the Spurs,
and also not necessarily, especially with the teams that he started out on, with the Spurs not being like the number one option.
Right. Speaking of the Spurs, that's the other news in the West.
Yes, Chris Paul.
Yeah. We mentioned that earlier, but that's going to be big for Castle coming in as to have a mentor, as like a true point guard in every sense of the word.
And as much as I like a lot of the young guys in San Antonio, just because also, frankly, I think Wembanyama, despite their record, I think made them just a little bit. I think he himself having a fantastic season,
end of the season,
and
in particular.
But I think he made some of these other players on the team also play better and kind of work a little bit better in the fabric of the team now that he's there. I think having a guy like Chris Paul, who maybe even in his more depleted state, just because he's getting up there in age too, he's probably almost 40 at this point, if not already. I don't think there's that many guys who have, even now to this day, even with how old and kind of senior Chris Paul is, have the floor vision and the basketball IQ that Chris Paul has.
Yeah, this feels like mentor signing.
To have Chris Paul be someone who could distribute or like pick and roll with Victor Wembanyama, like he's just gonna know exactly where to go with the ball for a guy that he will be a true partner for a rookie who's already put most of it together.
Yeah.
He was almost Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie.
Right.
But to have that instead of, for example, like whoever the Spurs point guard was, Trey Jones or Malachi Branham, or I don't know, just like whoever's on that team.
Right.
What's that guy's name? What's that guy's name from Tennessee? Is that Malachi Branham? There's another rando, I think, on that team too.
I don't know.
But he will be a massive upgrade at that position.
Blake Wesley?
No, there's a guy. His name was like Kennedy something. I just forgot his name.
Okay. Keldon Johnson. No,
Keldon's
that's
a
a forward. Yeah. I don't know who I'm thinking of. No, we don't know. The point is just that they're nobodies. All right. And then I guess what are the other big moves that we could talk about here, and then just wrap up the NBA a little. Pascal Siakam re-signed, which was that was a great trade for them, for the Pacers, who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. Malik Monk re-signed with the Kings, which was really big because he had a great year, and it wasn't as expensive as some people thought. It was 4 years, $79 million. Emmanuel Quickley, old Nick, re-signed, and he's going to be on the Raptors. He signed a 5-year, $175 million deal, which is interesting because I still have my questions about if Emmanuel Quickley can be a starting point guard. He can score, but I don't know if he has the distribution or floor vision that you necessarily need. I know he had a pretty good year after being traded from the Knicks to the Raptors, but this is a pretty rich contract for somebody who I don't necessarily know if has proven himself, but they gave up assets for him, so he kind of boxed him into a corner in Toronto.
I love Quick, and I think
too.
I think he's a great athlete, and he's a fun spark plug scorer. But I'm with you. I think if anything, I hate to say it, and not again to bring it back to my team, but I'm much more pleased signing Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby to deals than I am being in a position where we'd be signing Emmanuel Quickley to either an equivalent deal or even a deal of this stature, which is potentially lower.
Quickly would not have been a good player off the bench for the Knicks, and I'm so much more thrilled to have
100%.
Deuce McBride.
No, right, and also for a lesser cost because Deuce was a second-round pick.
Deuce was a second-round pick, yeah. And then they took they traded up in the draft to get a very pro-ready the guy Luke
Tyler Kolek.
Yeah, sorry,
from Marquette.
Yeah, from Marquette.
Who apparently I don't know if this is true. Somebody in the audience will I think have to verify this, but he I think was projected to Tyler Kolek from Marquette, the point guard. He was I think slated to be drafted much higher, but apparently some potentially erroneous rumors about his Wonderlic score went around, and people were like, "Oh, he's a dumbass." But
did they use that in the NBA?
No, but I was saying I think someone on Twitter, I think if I'm not mistaken, debunked this because the NBA does not use the Wonderlic.
Right. That's why I did make that. So
I'm not certain if actual scouts and front office departments were genuinely spooked by him potentially being a dumbass. Mm-hmm. But people on Twitter were like, "This is not an accurate report. The NBA does not use the Wonderlic to assess players. So do not consider this." But I thought Kolek was very good at Marquette, and I think he'd be I think he's going to be an ideal bench guy.
Perfect bench guy, right? So, and then you can have Deuce be off ball, to be the shooting guard, as opposed, which is more his natural position anyway.
And it was Kennedy Chandler, by the way, and he was never on the Spurs; he was on the Grizzlies.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I mean, we were scraping the bottom of the barrel there. Obi Toppin re-signed. I do not have a ton of faith in him as a player, but that's a whole. I mean, we're in. He
showed a little bit more in Indiana than I feel like he ever showed in New York, which is obviously unfortunate for me because I was we always saw the athleticism, the dunking ability. We always saw that. But he, I feel was able to at least develop more of an outside shot.
Yeah.
So we'll see if obviously, but I think
it's not a ton of money. It's 4 years, $60 million deal.
Right. And I think he's ultimately in a good ecosystem in Indiana. Now with Siakam confirmed staying there, and I think
he's just such a horrible defender.
That's
and
the
low
issue.
effort defender. Right. He needs to work on
the whole Pacers team. I think we were discussing them definitely just needs to find more defense than they had. But
right.
We shall see.
And I'm not sure what the future is for the Heat. Bam Adebayo re-signed there, and that's good, but they still don't necessarily have the depth that I would think that they need to be competitive, in a real way in the East, but they're always competitive to a degree. Nick Claxton was extended in Brooklyn. You know, like, not to brag, but I saw him walking on the street. That's not a brag. That's all.
Where'd you saw him? You
Nick
saw him
Claxton, yeah.
in the city?
In Brooklyn, where we live.
And was he's huge, right?
He's very tall.
Because I think he is either 7 feet or
That's
over
why
7.
I noticed him.
Yeah, you could just be like,
It's not even a brag. It's just a fact. It's
No.
just, hey, Nick, hit me up.
what's up,
Saw you
Clax?
on the street one time.
What's up, young
And I left
Clax?
you alone.
You didn't dap him up?
I did not. And this was also pandemic time too. So we were
really not dapping.
He was
anybody else.
masked, but he had like blonde braids at the time, so he was easy to
for
pick
sure.
out.
He's I think that's good for the Knicks good for the Nets to retain. I really like Claxton as a player.
Mm-hmm.
He's his offensive profile is a little bit more limited, but he's truly as like at his size and position one of like the best defenders in the league.
Yeah. I think we mentioned a lot of this. Yeah, not sure what the Clippers are doing. Kevin Porter Jr., who has a bunch of issues, signed with them. He gets another chance. Royce O'Neal re-signed with the Suns. Again, I don't know what the hell the Suns are doing. There's a lot of, like, I feel like talent drain right now from the West to the East. It may not make itself obvious next year, but the year after, I feel like we could be...
Royce O'Neal's re-signing with Phoenix does make me feel like. I mean, I think also Matt Ishbia, the Suns owner, kind of established this. I think KD has tried to as well to quell these rumors, but I think re-signing Royce, KD was a teammate of KD and Royce O'Neal were teammates in Brooklyn, and then he came over to Phoenix, and I think he was actually one of the most like effective non-KD Bradley Beal Devin Booker players because he actually like fit with the team and essentially nobody else on the Suns did. So I think it makes sense to maybe keep KD happy, but I just think, as we've said,
oh god,
the Suns have no depth. They have no depth on their team.
And the way that they
like
play
5 or 6
basketball,
players.
they're starting like
it's clogged toilet basketball.
It's horrible to watch. All right, well, that's really it for the NBA. We went long on the NBA, though, so you got your fix, folks. Now we turn to the much less popular NHL, but I still care about the NHL.
But still a decent amount going on.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll start here because I'm not going to allow the NHL to do this, like, to drop this story in the middle of...
Let's start here.
In the height of free agency, so I'm leading with it because these MFers... as free agency kicked off yesterday, the most transparent effort I've seen in quite a while to bury a story, the NHL decided that it was going to reinstate the Blackhawks villains that were responsible for presiding over a sexual assaulter being on their team and covering it up. And it wasn't like this person was a power player. It was a video assistant. This is how deep the depravity runs here. The NHL has announced that they will reinstate Stan Bowman, Joel Quenneville, and Al McIsaac. Quenneville is the one that I find to be the most egregious. If you pull up this tweet, Bradley, I had been reminded of this, that Quenneville wrote not just... helped cover up this predator and the sexual assault because they want to win the Stanley Cup in Chicago. Cover up that situation. Quenneville wrote a recommendation about this predator, Aldrich. He wrote, Aldrich did a great job for the coaching staff in preparing us for all our meetings and coordinating several tasks that we forwarded his way. Brad has several people relying on him at the same moment, and his way of deflecting and accommodating everyone at once. Congrats on winning the Stanley Cup. So that was him writing a recommendation where he then went on to be a repeat offender, this guy Aldrich, and sexually assaulted a 16-year-old, which is what he eventually got caught for.
Based off the recommendations of Joel Quenneville and other members of the leadership team of the Chicago Blackhawks.
So here, let's get the facts. This is an article from The Athletic that breaks down this story. Again, that was dropped in the midst of the height of free agency to get drowned out in the news cycle. NHL reinstates Joel Quenneville, Stan Bowman, Al McIsaac from ban tied to Blackhawks scandal. After nearly nearly 3-year exile for which the NHL deemed their inadequate response to Kyle Beach's allegations of sexual assault by Chicago Blackhawks video coach Brad Aldrich. Former head coach Joel Quenneville, general manager Stan Bowman, and executive Al McIsaac were reinstated by the NHL on Monday. They are now eligible to seek a job with an NHL team effective immediately or can start working as soon as July 10th. The league indefinitely banished all three following the release of the Jenner and Block report, an independent review of the allegations and response commissioned by the Blackhawks in October 2021. According to the report, all three men, along with Blackhawks president John McDonough, executive Jay Blunk, and assistant GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, now the GM of the Winnipeg Jets, were told of Beach's allegations during a meeting following the Blackhawks' victory in Game 4 of the 2010 Western Conference Final, which clinched their berth in the Stanley Cup Final. Mental skills coach Jim Gary, who brought the allegations to management after hearing them from skills coach Paul Vincent, said Quenneville, quote, appeared angry and was concerned about upsetting team chemistry, the report read. Bowman told investigators that Quenneville, quote, said that it was hard for the team to get where they were, and they could not deal with this issue now. The allegations stayed in that room, and Aldrich was allowed to continue working as a video coach. His name was etched into the Stanley Cup, and he got his day with the trophy. Quenneville gave him a positive job evaluation. 3 years later, Aldrich was convicted of criminal sexual conduct with a minor in Michigan. That's what I alluded to earlier. Upon the release of the report more than 11 years after the meeting where the allegations were brought to management, Bowman and McIsaac were immediately ousted by the Blackhawks, and Quenneville resigned as head coach of the Florida Panthers within days. Quenneville is the second winningest coach in NHL history and can now resume his chase of Scotty Bowman's all-time wins record. Oh, nice! He needs 276 more wins to pass the Scotty Bowman's 1,244. Scotty Bowman is Stan Bowman's father. How lovely! Bowman, who was also the person who just got reinstated. Both Quenneville and Stan Bowman have actively sought reinstatement. Bowman was a candidate for general manager jobs last summer, and Quenneville, in his only public remarks, told the Cam and Strick podcast in April that he felt he deserved a second chance. Let's hear this quote. I mean, is it full of remorse? I had a miss in 2010, and I own it, Quenneville told the podcast. At the same time, I believe there's a place for me in this game. So I just want to...
There was a place for
there's... Bradley yelling off mic. What did you say?
I said he also believed there was a place in the game for Brad Aldrich.
Brad Aldrich was, again, a video assistant. You're trying to say that this allegation would have upset team chemistry? We could take this off the screen here, Bradley. But, I mean, this is just insanity. Quenneville is a man that has been immensely successful. He does not need to be a part of the NHL again. He's 65 years old. Bro, you're eligible for Medicare. Why are you coming on? Why does the NHL feel the need that they need to allow this guy to participate in the league at this point? It's insanity. And Kyle Beach, we played his testimony. He came forward, and there. By the way, this was not that there was the 16-year-old that he, on Joel Quenneville's recommendation, assaulted. But there was another allegation in the Blackhawks that was anonymous, but Beach came forward and spoke about his experience. You know, he was the 11th overall draft pick, but never really was able to achieve what he needed to, and he blames in part the fact that he was traumatized because Aldrich allegedly, I barely need to say that, but he used physical coercion, a baseball bat, to force oral sex and other sexual assault upon this young man, Kyle Beach, who was very young at this time. Like, I don't know if he was 19 or around that age, but a young player on the Chicago Blackhawks. And Quenneville chose to not just keep him on staff after hearing about this extremely violent sexual assault and habitual harassment of this young man, because it would upset team chemistry. Again, a video assistant, not an assistant coach, a video assistant. Then they buried it. And then he left, had his name etched into the Stanley Cup, and Quenneville wrote him a recommendation. And the NHL feels that they should put this guy back in. Like, I mark my words. This league is so damn backwards.
He's gonna get a head.
He's gonna get a
job.
head coaching job because isn't it
It's
so sweet? He wants
inevitable.
to beat a record.
And you're gonna hear. And I gotta tell you, I'm really cynical about this shit because to me, it's like, if in those moments where you heard these allegations and you being Joel Quenneville, your only concern was this is going to affect team chemistry for the Stanley Cup. I was talking about the majesty and the pageantry of the Stanley Cup and why I enjoy that so much last week, but it's a fucking trophy.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a fucking game. This man was violently sexually assaulting somebody in their building under their watch, and he's talking about team chemistry going into the playoffs.
But like it could be justifiable, not even justifiable, but like he could make a case that he wasn't completely negligent if he didn't write a recommendation for him later.
I was just gonna say, then you go as far to then the playoffs continue. You win the Stanley Cup. This man's name is etched on the cup. He gets his day with the Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. He has written a recommendation for another job in Michigan, and literally is a repeat offender. Cynically, my view of these things is, especially given the organization, because the Wirtz family are horrible people as well, and consider the logo, consider all the dialogue around the logo. It's a pretty morally bankrupt organization, the Blackhawks, despite their success. Cynically, I only think they really feel bad or really have shown any semblance of contrition because they were caught.
Of course. The owner was like indignant when asked about that.
Right.
We played that clip if you recall.
If there was no scrutiny of this, Kyle Beach would be anonymous, and Kyle Beach would not have told the story, and Kyle Beach would have been a statistic either as a player who washes out of the league with very little fanfare, or as someone who has. Or as someone, a number of, I have no idea what the numbers are necessarily off the top of my head, but thousands of people who are quietly victims of sexual assault in the workplace. So I actually don't think they feel bad at all, and I think they're only feeling bad because they're essentially compelled to by the NHL. And now that they've taken a little time out, they want to get back in on the action. And we're gonna hear guys like fucking what's that moron's name? Mike Milbury. Or Rick Tocchet. I guess Tocchet's a coach now, but Mike Milbury, guys like that, whoever, being like, the adversity that Joel Quenneville overcame to get back in the box, to get back in coaching, to reach that record. The absolute adversity. Like, we're gonna hear that, and I'm gonna want to like literally gouge my eyes out because the adversity is literally ruining someone's life. And
abdicating your responsibility as the leader of the team. And this is more than that, too. It's the institutional rot of the NHL. This story is not about why the league can't grow and isn't growing at the pace of, say, the NBA, but it is in part that. Because I say this every time. The league treats itself like it's like a fraternity, a college fraternity. And it's so insular, and the logic makes no sense to anybody outside of this. And this guy's 65. Why does he have to participate and be a coach again? Why?
He also is not, by the way, and I'm saying, and this is a very minor point because like I said, this to me is almost barely about hockey. You could if this person was a
right
housekeeper or a server or a delivery driver, they would still be having gotten sexually coerced and assaulted and harassed in the workplace. But in the game of hockey, even still, Quenneville is not like Paul Maurice.
Yep.
Paul Maurice just won his first Stanley Cup after 25, 30 years of coaching. Quenneville has 4 with coaching the Blackhawks. He does not need any more glory unless he wants this record to cheers over with the son of the coach that was also reinstated for glossing over this atrocity that they literally allowed to happen under their noses.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. We see it in a number of places. I'm going to make you think about politics for one more second.
Oh, God.
But you know what? In a country where we essentially equate ending working with dying, the people in the highest ranks of many different places also do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have who we have in the White House, It's why we have essentially a gerontocracy in our federal government. That's why there are fossils like Sumner Redstone basically whittling out the rest of their days at the tops of media companies while their kids fight over control of them. And that's why we have guys like Joel Quenneville, who is literally someone who covered up a sexual assault in the workplace, saying, I need to hit fucking Stan Bowman's record before I die.
Well, he's so beautiful. He'll be able to try. And then we'll just talk actually quickly about NHL free agency after crapping on the league, rightly so, for a little bit. The Lightning made a bunch of big moves, and they traded Mikhail Sergachev to Utah, the nameless Utah team. Which
that's so stupid.
It's
That's
so
stupid.
It's because the owner in Arizona is pretending like he's working really hard to get them to come back.
Oh yeah, Alex Mariuelo, that fucking loser.
Yeah. All right, you've hit your F-bomb quota.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah. Beep. You're stupid. So Sergachev went to Utah, and that's actually a pretty good move. They decided that they were going to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe now that they are in a different ownership structure, because the Arizona Coyotes had basically been a graveyard for contracts that other teams wanted to dump. But Sergachev is a top pair defenseman. He's only 26. He can move the puck, or a second pair at the very least. But I think for Utah, top pair defenseman.
Yeah, and he's young. He's like one of the few younger Lightning,
well, no longer,
classic guys. He's a great player. I think it's good to have him as like a building block for a new franchise.
Yeah. I mean, and they took Jerome Ignala's son fairly early. I think
shit.
Most people thought that Utah pick was a bit of a reach, but like in terms of character and pedigree.
Are we sure Jerome Ignala's not still playing in the league?
He is not still playing in the league.
Not yet. Okay.
Yes.
He's finally retired.
Yes. Well, I have a story about that. I don't want to reveal any information. I told you my ex's family brother wasn't in the NHL. And I know a good story about Ignala. Whatever. I don't want to.
I think it was him a few years ago where it was like either the Penguins or another one of the teams that he's been on were like they were getting together for like a 20-year anniversary, and he was like, I can't come, I have a game.
Yeah.
Because he's like 47 and still in the league, and all these other guys are retired.
It's incredible. Some of these guys are just, they're addicted to it in a great way. And then also the Lightning traded Tanner Jeannot to the Kings, who I think the Kings made some pretty weird moves, but he only has 1 year left on his contract, and he's had a bit of an underwhelming tenure in Tampa, but he gets a fresh start in LA. He's a hard-hitting forward. They really moved their team around because Stamkos is now in a different sweater. Stamkos to the Nashville Predators, who were extremely aggressive. Barry Trotz as the general manager at this point. I'm a little bit mixed on it because the contract is pretty significant for Stamkos.
I thought the same thing.
For a guy of his age, and he wanted money, and that makes total sense. He's won in Tampa, but their longtime stalwart. He's going to be making 4 years, $32 million at that point. And Nashville also made the move for Jonathan Marchessault. And I would have been, if I'm a Predators fan, I would be a little bit worried about the amount of term that they gave to older guys. Like Jonathan Marchessault is 33, 34 years old, and I know him and Stamkos have championship pedigree, but they also signed Brady Shea, another old Rangers defenseman I know well, who's a really good player, good character guy. He looks like a Disney freaking prince, but 7 years at 7 AAV? For Shea, I don't know about that. Shea is a solid fundamentals player, but he's not a high upside defenseman.
The Preds are kind of doing what their football counterparts in Nashville are doing.
It's so funny. That's true.
They're kind of doing like, let's fill our cap sheet with like good players because we were sort of irrelevant last year, and like maybe if we infuse some kind of big name talent and some star power, we'll have a little bit more.
They need to score. Going. Like Nashville played really well during a stretch last year where they were surprising and they were fighting for one of those final playoff spots, but it kind of collapsed because they aren't that talented.
And Saros is a good goalie. They kept him around, which I think is important. Like he's a pretty stout I think he was probably one of the reasons they were actually staying in it till the end, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think just infusing any sort of talent or kind of like name recognition type players is
Right.
probably good for the putting butts in seats, but also I think will probably elevate the play a little bit too.
Right. I mean, Stamkos is 34 years old. He's going to be on the decline a little bit. He turns 35 in February, and he had a 40-goal season last year, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to be sustainable at this point.
And Marchessault he'll be 34 this year too, because as a undrafted guy, I think he came to real prominence a little bit later in his career than some of these other guys. Yeah.
Right. So look, I'm not going to be mad if a team wants to spend money in that way, but I don't necessarily think it was the best value. Like, the best value deal was Sam Reinhart, who had an over 50-goal season, and he could have gotten $10 million a year elsewhere, but the Panthers got him at like $8.6 million a year for 8 years. The term is crazy too, because the cap's going to go up, and Sam Reinhart is that man. He's in his prime at 28 as well.
Yeah, and the guy, right, and also to get him for that, the guy who literally sealed the deal for their Game 7 Stanley Cup win is that's pretty great.
Really good value.
To bring that to the value of the contract, to bring the guy back long term, I think it's just a great move for Reinhart and a great move for the team. Reward the guys who have literally brought you to the path of glory.
Yeah, and he wanted to. I think part of why he wanted part of why he got they were able to get that value for him is because he wanted to stay so badly in Florida. I mean, he just won the cup there. Why wouldn't he? The Canucks got Jake DeBrusk, which is a really interesting signing. They were able to take him away from the Bruins. He's likely to slide into that second line with Pettersson centering it, which I think is pretty good for him. So that was a deal that I think is good. He's had some inconsistency, but he wasn't able to fully find a place in Boston. So I think the contract's a little bit concerning if he's not able to be as consistent, but they're trying to win now, I think, and they fill a hole on that line with him at right wing. Jake Gensel.
I was just gonna say. I was gonna ask
Tampa.
You, yeah,
I was disappointed because I thought the Rangers could actually be in on Gensel. I love his game.
I know. So it's also just interesting. Like not obviously one for one. I just mean you lose a good young player in Sergachev, but then Gensel comes over from Carolina and
they wanted to get faster. I really do think,
right.
and stay competitive in they made the playoffs last year, but they were definitely getting older, and so they made some tough decisions. Gensel for 7 years, $9 million AAV is pretty big, and they get that Florida bump there as well. And then when that happened, it was quite obvious what was going to happen with Stamkos. But he's fast, he's scrappy, gives them some speed. It's a good trade it's a good signing for them.
I just think with John Cooper still behind on the bench, and also all the other great players the Lightning still have, I think he'll fit like a glove in Tampa.
I think so too.
I think they'll be as they always are, but will be a real force to reckon with. Having Gensel and Kucherov and Braden Point is just going to be awesome.
Yeah. And the signing that I think people were really unsure of what the hell the Blue Jackets were thinking was the Sean Monahan 5-year deal. He does not seem to be worth that term, but it's a leadership deal. He's played with Johnny Hockey before. It's about keeping him comfortable. The Penguins also were traded for Kevin Hayes, which I didn't like that move at all for them. Kevin Hayes is not a fast skater. He's an older center. The Dubas clearly wants to keep the Penguins competitive while they're rebuilding, which I never think is the best move. You go one way, you go the other way. But now he's getting older and already wasn't particularly fast, and the Penguins need speed on that team, and so I was not a fan of that move.
He's 32 already, so
yeah,
they're not getting any younger with that move, as you're saying.
Right. The Capitals are also somewhat trying to do that while staying competitive because they can't get out of that horrible for them contract for Alex Ovechkin, who's really was phoning it in during the playoffs against the Rangers, just not trying at all. This is why there used to be some conversation about who's the greater player during their heyday, Ovechkin or Sidney Crosby, and I just want to be like, shut up about that. There's no competition. Crosby has way more dimensions to his game just by his position, but also as a leader. He would never play the way that Ovechkin is. And
Well,
it doesn't help that I hate Ovechkin for being a Putin like stan. I mean, he's not a good guy.
But it's almost analogous to like, when for how long Karl Malone had the scoring record before like LeBron. I mean, or had was up there in the scoring record, like top 5, top 3 before LeBron. It's like that's kind of mostly what Malone was, whereas LeBron is like
right.
a all-around incredible player. Like Crosby, like there are things that Crosby does on the ice, like even his brain that Ovechkin does not do, and never did.
Right, exactly. Like the brain that's what ages well for Crosby too. And so Chychrun was sent over to like he's a bit of an old school defenseman. I'm not a huge fan of Jacob Chychrun's game. I also think he seems like clearly he loves Joe Rogan. He is the one he eats raw meat all the time. He's that kind of freak.
So he's our very own liver king.
Yep, he's a liver king. The Rangers traded, speaking of the Penguins, for Riley Smith. I'm mixed on this move. He's a true right wing that they can slot in on the third pair, and I think that they needed depth at that position, especially if they do move Kakko in some sort of deal. But the other thing that's going on with the Rangers, which is, the Riley Smith only has 1 year deal, 1 year left on his deal, and I think the Penguins are retaining salary. So it's a very good piece. I just wish the Rangers were getting a little faster. Now, the problem that the Rangers are encountering right now is with Jacob Trouba, because they've made it clear that they wanted to trade him to Detroit. Now, Trouba has 2 years left on his deal, and it's a tradable contract if a team wants him, but his play really, really has been declining, and he's not a player that I think the Rangers necessarily need anymore. He's a leadership guy. He was great for building the Rangers back up, but, the analytics don't like him because the hard hitting, and he's not fast, and he doesn't move the puck well. And he had a pretty horrendous playoffs.
Well, I was going to say also, like, if his most recent, almost like resume credits are to bear on the future, the postseason did not do many favors for Trouba also.
No, they didn't. But the problem is, and I do feel for him, and even though he has dirty plays, off the ice, he's seemingly the greatest guy. His wife is a doctor, and she's in residency in New York. So he has a partial 15 team no trade clause. But the thing is that Detroit trade seemed to be in the works, but he just basically said, I'm not going to play for you because my wife is in residency and it's not transferring over.
Now that's wife guy.
So that he is super, but they also have a 6-month-old. Like, this was cutthroat by Drury to do this for the captain. Right. Now it's in a situation where, like, he may have forced himself to stay on the Rangers. How awkward is that? They're in a mess. And I don't know how this Trouba situation is going to get resolved, but
because it's sort of hard. You're staying put in a way that's like beneficial to his personal life, obviously in a number of ways, and yet
she can't get out of her residency.
Right.
My best friend from high school is currently in residency,
and
you
can't just say, "Hey, I'm switching."
Oh my god! Yeah. I mean,
you get placed there.
Yes, you get placed there. That is quite difficult. So I do feel for him in that way.
And then, right, and as you're saying, you're in this situation where you're like, oh, like by virtue of my clause, like I'm staying here while kind of knowing that the top brass wanted to move me.
Yeah, right, exactly. And God, I lost my place. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, but that is going to be, I think, an awkward situation. We'll see how that plays out. The Islanders got Anthony Duclair.
My guy.
He finally gets term. 4 years, $3.5 million per year. He's always undervalued. Always. And he finally gets a contract on the team with term. I thought that was really good value for the Islanders, who seemingly, for some reason, have no money to work with, even though they are a middling roster at best. But, of course, that's a Lou Lamoriello special. I mentioned Jake DeBrusk. I mentioned Kevin Hayes. I mentioned Sam Reinhart. Elias Lindholm went to Boston. That's a bit underwhelming to me. Tyler Toffoli went to the Sharks. They're kind of like just beefing up on serviceable players, so that Macklin Celebrini and company and Will Smith, who ends up going there, are going to be able to be okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's basically it. The NHL free agency hasn't been that good. Oh, Chris Tanev went to the Maple Leafs. That's shored up their blue line a little bit, but it's a good amount of term for him. But that's a bit of a loss for the Stars because they maybe wanted to hold on to him, but they acquired his negotiating rights from the Stars, and he ended up going to Toronto. And we could see Mitch Marner could be on the move at some point as well.
I guess I was going to ask you before we wrap because for both NBA and NHL, I guess I just wonder if we think there's anybody still kind of potentially on the move. And I guess for the NBA, I still think potentially Brandon Ingram could be on the move. We'll see.
Did I dream that Brandon Ingram actually did get traded?
No, I don't. I don't.
Yes.
Wait.
Oh wait, no, I did dream it.
Okay.
I did.
I was gonna say I don't believe he did.
It was just that he was being targeted by the Kings.
That's the thing is I think there was some rumblings about Sacramento, but I don't think anything has moved past that yet. Other than that, I think also in Brady Tkachuk maybe potentially, unless he stays put with Ottawa. But those are kind of the two ones I'm still keeping an eye on.
Patrick Laine also had expressed
yeah.
that maybe he wants to be
I guess Zegras potentially, but I don't know.
I mean, Patrick Kane, that was the other thing, is he re-signed on a one-year deal after
Detroit,
he is so fucking annoying. I hate Patrick Kane. I'm just putting that out there. Like, he's constantly feeding the press information to put himself. He's so addicted to attention. And I don't like that he was a part of that cover-up as well, by the way, in Chicago.
I was going to say another kind of detestable former Blackhawk.
He's so desperate for the Rangers' attention. It was just like, I knew they were not going to sign him. I knew it. I knew, because he's not, like, he can't play defense.
It didn't work the first time.
It was horrible the first time. And I get it. It's like, okay, now they have an actual coach with structure, but oh my God. Yeah. Oh, the Devils got Brett Pesce. It's a bit of a richer deal than people anticipated. Teravainen went back to the Blackhawks. Brandon Montour signed by the Kraken.
I like that for them.
I like that for them too.
I like Montour.
Some
Montour's
blue line.
a good player.
Yeah. That's it then. I think that's. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the Devils made the trade for Markstrom from the Flames.
Oh yes.
So hopefully that they can get some better goaltending coaching and not let that guy go to waste, because Markstrom is a really good player and can be a goaltender that holds it down for the Devils for a while, but they've struggled in net for quite a bit. Anyway, I'm losing steam.
Oh, is there one more? I think I just saw it in the chat here from Celibate Yoda. Leafs are going to regret that OEL signing, LOL. So I guess Oliver Ekman-Larsson went to Toronto.
Where did I see that?
I may have missed that, but I think.
Yeah, Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
So that's kind of interesting. But
that is interesting, but 4-year contract, it's not too bad. That's a movable deal. Yeah, I don't know though. Like, that might be a little bit of the championship.
Yeah, inflation.
Because
he'll be 33 in July in a few days, actually. So I guess
he's been good, but
he's good. He's
good. The term might be a little bit concerning, but I don't hate that. No. Whoever in the chat said that, I don't really like. They needed some help on defense, and that's part of why they got Tanev as well. It will be interesting to see if they move Marner. I'm not exactly sure that they will at this point. All right, we're gonna read some IMs and get out of here. J-Man Jays, I saw the Trouba story on Kipper and Bourne. What do you think? Also, Nashville Preds going hog wild this summer. I think I addressed it. Family Value says, Kolek, it was a joke that he was in Onwell in college. I don't think it affected where he was drafted. Okay, yeah.
Good. I saw that and I was like, that is nuts if that actually affected
Exactly.
anything.
And we really don't have many IMs today. I think everybody just must have nothing to say about all of our incredible commentary.
We will talk about the Euro and the Copa America next week.
Will we?
I don't really. I think I only
You
think.
can. I'm on brain overload. I can't. I don't even know what's going on there.
Well, okay. I'll say a little bit about the Copa just because.
No, you will. You will next week. You will help us out, and you will give your commentary.
Because Uruguay beat the U.S.
Oh.
And.
Oh my God.
And it's just a never-ending string of embarrassments for Greg Berhalter and the U.S. men's national team. I am so sick of this guy and his stewardship of this team, but I will get into it more as the tournament continues to progress, both in Europe and in the U.S., because I am following it. So,
all right, perfect. The final IM of the day, Tom Lofink. Happy Tuesday in rugby. The men's mid-year international games have started. England beat Japan in Tokyo 52-17. Wales lost to South Africa 41-13 in Tuckenham Stadium in London. Wales player Elliot Dee has been ruled out of the Australian tour through injury. Tom, thank you for our rugby correspondence from you. Much appreciated. All right, folks. We will see you next Monday. We'll be back on our regular schedule. Probably. Unless it's like something massive's happening on Monday as things have been trending. And then we'll figure it out. But Monday, we'll be back.
Dies.
See,
I'm gonna look back on this fondly if something happens.
No.
Fondly or poorly.
we need something to change, but I'm not putting out evil because it's bad karma.
Beep beep.
See
All right,
you
bye, guys.
Monday.